Hey everyone, my name is Bekah and I'm usually joined by a co-host, either my husband Derek or my little 1-year-old baby Ellie. But today I'm going to be by myself answering a question that's really important to ask yourself if you're planning on thru hiking with a baby. The initial question of, is it dangerous to thru hike with a baby? If you're new to our channel, I, along with my husband, my 1-year-old, thru hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2017. And we had an awesome experience, and we just want to share all of our experience and tips and things that worked and didn't work for us on the trail with you all, so that if you have questions and you're planning a thru hike with a baby, or you just want to do a long section hike or a weekend hike and you want some tips, that's what we're here for. So just to throw this out there, this is not a general, is it dangerous to thru hike the AT for any adult. This is specifically related to thru hiking with a baby. So I just want to give you an insight on our thoughts on, is it dangerous to thru hike the AT with a baby, because obviously this was a really big question, and it was probably the first question that we thought of before we decided to thru hike the AT. And if you're asking yourself those kinds of questions, that is great. That is a really good thing that you're asking yourself those questions, because it means you're thinking through the process and you don't just have this romantic idea of the Appalachian Trail and taking your baby outdoors. You're thinking it through, and you want to make sure you're making a wise decision that will enrich all of you in a safe way. I am all about families getting outdoors and taking extended backcountry trips together, because I think there can be a lot of growth that happens through those trips. I also think that minimizing risk is extremely important, and not only important for the safety of you and the safety of your baby, but also just so that you have a really good experience. And you, by minimizing risk, you are creating a much easier platform for you to have that great experience. And so I think asking these kinds of questions are really good. To start out, I'm just going to let you know what I feel like are very real dangers you would come across on the AT having a baby with you. And the first of those is the weather. The weather patterns, especially up north, can come in very quick and very abrupt, and you don't really know how severe it's going to be. Frequently when we were up north, especially in Maine and in the Whites, you would see a 50% chance of rain, and sometimes the whole day was beautiful and gorgeous, and then other times there was wind that could literally knock you off your feet. And so you just have to be careful in weather and err on the side of caution, but that's one very real danger. Then the second one would be, people ask all the time about like bears and snakes, but as far as animals of sorts in the woods, I would say that ticks were the next danger that we faced, because ticks carry Lyme disease and other diseases that can make a baby go down really fast, because when babies get sick and they can't tell you what's wrong, what's going on, it's really important to do what you can to minimize that risk of them getting bit by a tick. Then the third one would be not having cell service if an emergency happens. And the fourth one is going to be waterborne pathogens and the norovirus. These are all things that we encountered people that got them on the trail, and so it is a very real sickness. And like I said about Lyme disease, when a baby gets sick, they can go down really fast. And so that's just another danger of having a baby on the trail. So before I just say yes or no, is it dangerous to thru hike the AT with a baby, of course I have lots of other things that contribute to that answer. But first of all, maybe your online research has brought you to a lot of forums. And dating back to the 90s, I've seen forums on taking babies on backpacking trips, on long backcountry trips. And so first of all, what you need to do is you need to consider the source of your research. And what I mean by that is when you're going on online forums where somebody's throwing out a question of, can I take my baby on the Appalachian Trail? You're going to get a million responses from people that don't know you and you don't know them. And so their answers are just going to be a general what they think without knowing you personally. And so if you're thinking about thru hiking, I strongly recommend connecting with somebody that has thru hiked the AT before and talking to them about what you want to do exactly and what your goals are. And so one of the biggest things I can recommend is for your goal to not be to finish the thru hike in a certain amount of time. And so I know that, our goal was we wanted to thru hike the AT. We wanted to reach the full 2,190 miles, but at the same time, it was more important for us to be bonding as a family and spending time together and growing together. And so you need to think about your priorities. So when you're talking to a thru hiker, hopefully you have a good relationship with them already, and you can kind of talk through those motives first. And then once you get the motives established that you're out there to grow and not to be die-hard, we're going to get there no matter what, when you establish positive goals, then you're a lot more likely to have a good experience and also to not make silly mistakes because you let your goal of getting to the finish line get in the way of your goal of just having an overall great experience with your family. So you may not have a thru hiker you already know, and that's okay. You can contact the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and they can put you in touch with other families that have taken kids around the general age that your kids are on the AT. So, for example, I know that there are families that have taken young kids ranging in ages from like 5 to 10 years old, and so you can get in touch with those families and talk through those questions. Or there's people like us who have taken extended backcountry trips with a really small baby, and hopefully what the families would do that have thru hiked with a baby before is we would kind of get to know you and get to know your background. And so getting to know your background is really going to help someone who has already thru hiked the AT. It's really going to help them establish what kind of advice that they can give to you. So what we did is we called up a thru hiker that we already knew, and we called them and explained our vision on what we saw our family doing for our thru hike, and then we explained our background. They already knew a little bit about it, but we explained more in depth, and then we just asked them the general question, what are your thoughts? What are the risks on the AT? And so essentially it came down to our background was really, really key into this being a good experience. And so I'm going to go into what our background was. And just a note beforehand, I'm not saying that our experience is exactly what you need to have before you go through hiking with a baby, but I know for us, it impacted our trip greatly in a positive way, and it really made things go smooth. So first of all, Derek and I have 4-year degrees in outdoor leadership, and so we spent 4 years of in professional training where we spent countless hours of both class time and field time researching the psychology behind why the outdoors are important for humans, and then we would take field work, and what that field work looked like was the first couple of years we were guided by professors, and they would take us and they would lead us, and then you kind of transition into the professors are still there on your trips, but they're not necessarily the ones taking charge. The students are taking charge. And then it moves to your senior year, your final year, where the professors really step out for the most part, and the students are leading everything. And so I had incredible training for 4 years, myself and Derek both, in outdoor leadership. And when I say trips, I mean we spent a total of, I guess it was 4 months straight backcountry experience, with only a couple days here and there coming back to resupply and get needs for different trips. And these were primarily backpacking trips and water trips and rock climbing trips, and water trips like whitewater rafting trips and canoe trips and kayaking trips. And so I really feel like that experience allowed Derek and I to know what it looked like to lead, and then also to be able to do that ourselves. And Derek and I were in that program at the exact same time, and so we were learning about each other and working together in a way that really benefited us on the trail. And so we knew each other so well, how the other person was going to operate on our thru hike, and that really helped us work together to make sure that Ellie's needs were taken care of. In addition to our professional college training, we also have experience guiding week-long backpacking trips for at-risk youth in Washington State. And these trips were for students that had really never gone on any kind of outdoor trip before. A lot of them had never left the city of Spokane, Washington. And so we would take them and start them from the beginning. And a lot of these beginner trips included beginner mountaineering. And so we had the experience under our belts that we had taken people on trips. Now, I know that taking youth is totally different than taking a baby. However, we had the responsibility of other people, and we had to put their needs first, and they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know the proper clothes to take or the proper care that they needed for self-care, hygiene, or foot care, or any of those kinds of things. And so being able to take the focus off of ourselves and place it on somebody else and make sure that their needs were taken care of at the same time that our needs were being taken care of was a huge key in success in our thru hike. So both of those combined experiences, the college experience of professional development and then the experience in the work field guiding backcountry trips, both of those combined, and Derek and I doing both of those together, we went to school together and we worked at this career together, they are what really set us up for an experienced background that made us so comfortable with being outdoors that it almost was second nature to us. You know, like filtering water and setting up the tent and just like general walking was normal to us. And so I think that played a huge role. So there are definitely thru hikers out there that we met on the trail that had never been backpacking before. You know, we had this friend, his name was Dice, and he was a southbounder that hiked with us for a while. And before he thru hiked, he had never been hiking once in his life. And so you look at him and you look at his gear and you're like, there's no way he's making it all the way. And he did. He completed his whole thru hike. We think stories like that are absolutely incredible and phenomenal to see, starting from literally never hiking before to completing the whole Appalachian Trail. That's amazing, but it's not appropriate when you have a baby with you, because you need to be able to take care of them. Their life is in your hands and they can't take care of themselves, and so that's a huge piece of it as well. And another thing is that while the AT is full of hikers, you know, we barely spent a night by ourselves in a camping area, and while there's so many people with you, we strongly recommend that you have a hiking partner, whether that be your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, a parent, a friend. Somebody needs to be your hiking partner that sticks with you the entire time, because it's not fair to the other thru hikers for you to rely on them to be that person in case of an emergency. Please take a friend, because if something happens to you, you cannot predict something that happens to you. Your baby is left on their own and they cannot take care of themselves. And so do yourself a favor and the people on the trail a favor and take a hiking partner if you're going to go for this long. When you are day after day out on the trail, I think that a hiking partner is very important. The next topic I want to talk about is backcountry medicine. And I don't just mean your basic first aid and CPR course. No, there are courses that are designed specifically to teach you how to use minimal resources in the backcountry when you don't have access to front country luxuries that will aid you in an emergency situation where you can't get anywhere really fast. And so Derek and I both took something that's called a Wilderness First Responder course, and you can find those all over the country if you do a Google search. There's lots of different organizations that do them, and it is about a 10-day course that involves a lot of reading material beforehand, and then usually the 10 days are primarily hands-on learning experience where you deal with all kinds of different emergencies that could happen in the backcountry. All the way from broken limbs to dehydration to altitude sickness, which is not something you have on the AT, but to puncture wounds, all different kinds of topics that you go over that you learn how to be prepared for. And the peace of mind that you get knowing how to be prepared for an emergency situation in the backcountry is priceless. So in a Wilderness First Responder course, you go over things like how to prevent Lyme disease and the signs of Lyme disease, and So we made sure we took those precautions, and then we also knew how to deal with waterborne pathogens and things like the norovirus, and making sure that you have the proper information on hand in your brain and the physical first aid materials that you would need to take care of a situation like that for a baby in the backcountry. I know that if you look up these courses, you've never taken one before, you're going to look at the cost and be like, oh my gosh, it's more expensive than any piece of gear I'm taking on the AT, but trust me, it is so important for you to have. And again, most thru hikers probably didn't have a wilderness first responder certification. However, they are responsible for themselves. You are responsible for a small, tiny human that is totally dependent on you. So please be prepared for a medical emergency if it were to arise. So then lastly, when you're taking into consideration how risky it is to take a baby on the AT, you need to have proper gear for your clothing. You need to have clothes that are going to keep them warm and dry at all times. You need to have a way to communicate when you don't have cell service, because while there is a lot of cell service on the AT, there's a lot of areas that don't have cell service. So you need something like a spot device that will be an emergency communication in case you don't have cell service. And then I also think you really should have a good carrier and a rain cover or umbrella over that carrier when it rains, because if you don't have a good carrier, when you're going up really steep sections, or actually more importantly when you're going down really steep sections, especially up in the northern region in Maine and New Hampshire, it is so important to have a good carrier that is going to protect your baby if you slip and fall, because you will slip and fall. And we did slip and fall sometimes with Ellie, and the frame on the carrier caught her every single time, and she never got any of the brunt of any fall that we had. And so we used the Deuter Kid Comfort 3, and it was absolutely amazing, and I would recommend it for any long distance hike that anyone were to do, but just a frame carrier is going to be really important. So the answer is it dangerous to thru hike the AT with a baby? That's up to you. If you're considering thru hiking with a baby, or you know somebody that is, I want you to seriously evaluate these areas before you take a baby onto the AT. And maybe right now you think about it and you're like, I don't think I really am ready for it. That's okay. You have time to go build these skills on your own and then introduce your child into the backcountry. And that way you have a great experience, because we want families to get out. We're an advocate for families getting outdoors and having an awesome time together and growing together and going through difficult things together. But at the same time, you want to minimize risk as much as you possibly can. And we want that to be a positive experience. And if you don't do the things you need to beforehand, it could turn out really not well. And so we just want the best for you all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped answer your question. It was not a black and white yes or no, is the AT dangerous with a baby, but I think you can put the pieces together that it's up to you. Do smart research, make sure you have the experience level, know what you're getting yourself into as far as the terrain goes, and be well prepared and have your baby well prepared for the trail. And so check out our channel, give it a thumbs up, comment if you have other questions. We are here to help you have an awesome experience on your Appalachian Trail thru hike. Thank you.